Welcome to English Tales for Learners, where stories are not just told, they are lived. In this channel, we don't just teach English, we take you on emotional journeys through true stories of pain, power, and perseverance. And as you listen, you learn English, naturally, deeply, beautifully. Today's story is not just about books, or magic, or success. It is about falling and getting back up. It is about depression, loss, and starting again from nothing. It is the true story of a woman who turned her darkest days into the most magical pages the world has ever read. This is the journey of Joanne Kathleen Rowling, known to the world as JK Rowling. The world knows her as the creator of Harry Potter, a name that sparks joy, wonder, and memories of a magical world. But behind the books, behind the fame, is a woman who walked through shadows to find her light. This is the story of JK Rowling, a woman who didn't just write stories. She wrote her way out of despair, with nothing but a pen, a dream, and a heart full of courage. Joanne Kathleen Rowling was born on a warm summer day, July 31st, 1965, in Yate, a quiet town in England. As a child, she was shy, a little clumsy, with glasses too big for her face. Her world was small. Her parents, her younger sister Di, and the books she loved. Her mother Anne was kind, with a smile that could light up a room. Her father Peter was stern, often distant. Their home wasn't always peaceful. Arguments filled the air, and money was tight. Joanne felt like she didn't quite fit. Not at home, not at school. But in her mind she was free. She created worlds where heroes fought dragons, where girls could be brave, where magic was real. She'd scribble stories on scraps of paper and read them to Di, her first audience, who listened with wide eyes. Those early stories were her escape, a place where she could be anyone, do anything, and feel safe. School was a mixed bag. Joanne loved English, her imagination soaring through every book she read. She devoured novels, from Jane Austen to C.S. Lewis, letting their words paint pictures in her mind. But her teachers called her too dreamy, as if dreaming was a flaw. She was smart, but she felt invisible, like she was waiting for something bigger. She struggled to make friends, often retreating into her stories to feel understood. Then, at 15, life dealt her a blow that would shape her forever. Her mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a cruel disease that stole her strength bit by bit. Joanne watched the woman who loved her most fade, her laughter quieter, her steps slower. It broke something inside her, but it also lit a fire. She kept writing, pouring her pain into stories, using words to hold on to the love she feared losing. After school, Joanne went to the University of Exeter, studying French and classics. She wasn't sure where life was taking her, but she dreamed of being a writer. She spent hours in the library, not just studying but scribbling ideas for stories in the margins of her notebooks. In her 20s, she moved to London, working as a secretary at Amnesty International. She typed letters to help free prisoners, but her heart wasn't in it. She felt restless, like she was living someone else's life. Her heart was somewhere else, somewhere no one else could see. Then, in 1990, on a delayed train from Manchester to London, everything changed. She was 25, staring out the window, when a picture flashed in her mind. A boy, skinny, with messy black hair, glasses, and a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. His name was Harry Potter. She didn't have a pen, so she sat there, ideas flooding her brain like a storm. By the time the train reached its station, her life had a new purpose. She rushed home, grabbed a notebook, and began sketching out a world of wizards, wands, and a school called Hogwarts. But life wasn't kind to her dreams. That same year, her mother died at the age of 45. Joanne was shattered. She hadn't even told her about Harry, about this boy who was starting to feel real. Grief swallowed her, and she fell into a deep depression. She described it later as a darkness that felt endless, like a cold fog that wouldn't lift. To escape, she moved to Porto, Portugal, hoping for a fresh start. She taught English at a language school, her days filled with teaching verbs and vocabulary to students. There, she fell in love with a Portuguese journalist, and they married quickly. In 1993, she gave birth to her daughter, Jessica. For a moment, it seemed like life might be kind again. But the marriage turned dark. Her husband was controlling, sometimes violent. Arguments turned into fear, and fear turned into danger. One terrifying night, Joanne fled with her baby in her arms, leaving behind her home, her belongings, and her hopes for a stable life. She returned to the UK with nothing, no money, no job, no safety. Just a suitcase, her daughter, and the story in her head. In Edinburgh, Scotland, she hit rock bottom. She lived in a tiny, cold flat, surviving on government welfare. Some days she couldn't afford to heat the apartment. She was a single mother, alone, with a baby to feed. Depression wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. She later described it as a cold, empty feeling, like her soul had vanished. There were moments when she thought of giving up, not just on writing, but on life. She felt like a failure, ashamed of her poverty, haunted by her losses. But every time she looked at Jessica, sleeping in her crib, she found a reason to keep going. Jessica's tiny hand, her soft breaths, became Joanne's anchor. And in those dark moments, Harry Potter became her lifeline. She started writing in cafes, pushing Jessica's stroller through the chilly Edinburgh streets until her daughter fell asleep. Then, at a small table in places like Nicholson's Cafe, with a cup of coffee she could barely afford, Joanne wrote. She wrote by hand, her fingers stained with ink, her notebooks filled with crossings out and new ideas. She wrote through hunger, through tears, through the weight of despair. Every word was a fight. She created Hogwarts, a school where misfits belonged, where children who felt different could find a home. She gave Harry friends, Ron with his loyalty and humor, Hermione with her fierce intelligence and courage. She gave him mentors like Dumbledore, who saw the good in him, and enemies like Voldemort, who tested his strength. She gave him a scar, a mark of pain that made him stronger. Harry's story wasn't just a story, it was hers. The Dementors, creatures that drained hope, were born from her depression. Hogwarts was the safe place she wished she had. Writing was her way of fighting back, of proving she was still here. It took 5 years to finish the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. She worked late into the night, after Jessica was asleep, in a flat that felt too small for her dreams. When it was done, she typed it out on an old manual typewriter, her fingers aching from the effort. She sent it to publishers, her heart full of hope. But rejection after rejection came back. 12 publishers said no. Some sent polite letters, others ignored her completely. One said, "No one will read a 300-page book about a wizard." Another suggested she get a real job. Each rejection felt like a punch, but Joanne didn't stop. She believed in her story, in Harry, in the magic she had poured onto those pages. Finally, in 1996, a small publisher called Bloomsbury took a chance. Not because of the adults, but because the CEO's 8-year-old daughter, Alice, read the first chapter and begged for more. "Please, Daddy, you have to publish this," she said. And so, they did. In 1997, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published. Only 500 copies were printed, mostly for libraries. Joanne was asked to use initials, JK, to hide that she was a woman, because publishers thought boys wouldn't read a book written by Joanne. She was paid a tiny advance of $2,500, barely enough to live on. She was still struggling, still counting pennies for groceries. No one, not even Joanne, expected what happened next. The book spread like wildfire. Children stayed up all night reading, their flashlights hidden under blankets. Parents bought copies for their kids, then stole them to read themselves. Teachers read it aloud in classrooms, their voices bringing Hogwarts to life. The story of Harry, the boy who lived, touched something deep in people's hearts. It wasn't just about magic. It was about courage, friendship, and finding light in the dark. By the time the second book, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, came out in 1998, the world was hooked. Lines formed outside bookstores at midnight releases. The books won awards, broke sales records, and were translated into dozens of languages, from Spanish to Japanese to Arabic. Over the next 10 years, JK Rowling wrote 7 Harry Potter books. Each one was darker, more complex, as Harry grew from a boy to a young man, facing choices that tested his heart. And as Harry grew, Joanne healed. Writing became her therapy, a way to process her grief, her battles with depression, her fears of failing as a mother. She remarried in 2001 to Neil Murray, a kind doctor who supported her dreams. She had 2 more children, David and Mackenzie, and built a family filled with love. She became a billionaire, richer than royalty, but money was never her goal. She gave millions to charity, funding causes for single mothers, children in poverty, and multiple sclerosis research in memory of her mother. She spoke openly about her struggles with mental health, telling the world, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Her life wasn't perfect. She faced criticism, made mistakes, and stirred controversy with her views on various issues. Some loved her, some didn't. Social media brought praise but also harsh judgment, and she navigated it with the same resilience she'd always shown. But no one could deny her impact. Her books sold over 500 million copies, making her one of the best-selling authors in history. They inspired 8 blockbuster movies, theme parks, plays, and a generation of readers who grew up with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Children who felt alone found hope in Harry's story. Adults who had forgotten how to dream remembered. Teachers used her books to teach courage, empathy, and the power of words. She proved that stories can change lives. Today, JK Rowling is more than an author. She's a symbol of resilience, of what it means to keep going when the world feels heavy. She wrote through darkness, not with a wand, but with words. And those words built a world where anyone could be a hero, where love and friendship could defeat even the darkest evil. Her story reminds us that pain can be transformed, that dreams can survive the coldest nights, and that a single idea, written in a moment of hope, can change everything. So, to you, listening to this story, if you feel lost, if you feel broken, if you feel like your dreams are too big for your reality, remember Joanne. A woman with nothing but a pen, a baby, and a story changed the world. She fell, she broke, she rose, and maybe, just maybe, your story can too.